expectations of the Forest Park governing body is that we always start on time. So we just like to thank everyone for coming out tonight as we hold this very important town hall meeting about redistricting. Our city attorney, Mr. Mike Williams, and myself, we're going to try to provide you with as much information as possible just to first share with you, educate you on what the redistricting reapportionment process is, the reason why we had to present it, and then what those further actions and implications mean for the city of Forest Park and its residents. Of course, one of the things that I'm most curious about is as we tried the bulk mailer, I'm hoping that everyone received a mailer in here from the city of Forest Park because they were supposed to be delivered last week. Nobody got one. Nope, we sent them to every household in this city. I asked that, okay? And so we sent out through our local vendor a postcard, and we paid for postcards in the amount of $4,000 to every household in this city. So if you didn't get it, in addition to that, we also communicated via our email system, which we have close to 20,000 emails and such on there. But our commitment remains that we're going to ensure that we get this information out one resident at a time, especially in those respective wards. We've been tirelessly working on this endeavor to ensure that we have more than enough information for all of our residents so that you know if your ward changed and you know how to find the information as to which wards you're in. We'd be remiss if we did not recognize our governing body members that are here and allow them the opportunity. First, just an introduction to welcome everyone here today. So I'll first start with our mayor, Mayor Angeline Butler, if you would have something to say as we jump in.
Well, good evening, everyone. I want to thank State Representative Ronna Burnell for being present with us today, and Representative Sandra Scott. Thank you so much. I was going to say Givens, I'm sorry, for being with us as well. And thank you, Mr. Clark, for putting this on. This is extremely important. We want to make sure that every resident is aware of the changes that is going on in their respective wards, because we want to ensure that every resident has the opportunity to vote. And disenfranchisement of any kind is unacceptable. And so we're going to make sure that we're doing our part to make sure that all of our residents are educated. And this is just one step in that process. And I understand there may have been a little disconnect with the mail outs, but we'll make sure we get them out again. And we're going to keep pushing this so that the one vote, one person rule is truly being embodied in what we're doing in Forest Park. So thank you.
We also have with us our Mayor Pro Tem, Ms. Kimberly James, sitting right here in the back, and then Councilwoman Akins Wells sitting right here on the front row. So the reason why we're doing it this way, you don't have your elected officials presenting tonight, is because we wanted to ensure, as well as them, this is not a political process. So the redistricting that has been done, even though the final approval lies in the hands of our governing body, there are no politics that went into us actually doing these lines. And the beauty of it was, because I don't even know the streets of Forest Park just yet, there were no biases done when we did these lines. The process of redistricting, and Attorney Williams, feel free to come up and help anytime you would like. The process of redistricting is one that happens every 10 years. It's known as the decennial U.S. Census. So every 10 years, when we complete the census, Clayton County had a huge push in 2020 in regards to ensuring that all of our voices were heard and we had proper counts, because one of the things that disenfranchised communities and communities of different socioeconomic groups don't recognize is that a lot of your federal funding comes from your population sizes. So a lot of the different grants that we receive is based upon the amount of individuals that we have in our communities. So when individuals don't participate in the system, in the census, it just lowers what those funding opportunities are. In addition to that, when you have wards or districts, at the end of this town hall meeting, we're going going to have a pop quiz and see who wins. And perhaps we'll give away a free ticket to the white party on next week because this information is so important. When the census is completed, if you are within a city, a municipality, or a county where you're divided into districts and or wards, similar to what Forest Park is, that brings out the deviation of population of individuals within those specific wards. When we went to the state to get this information, we learned that some of our wards were as high as 7% higher than some of our wards that were at a negative 7% deviation. What that means is that when we talk about equity and ensuring that all of our 5 wards are evenly balanced, we were high 7% within one of our wards. And so what the state reapportionment office does, by introduction via a member of your local delegation, which encompasses your House of Representatives or your senators, we have 2 of them here represented tonight, a local municipality cannot just walk into that office and begin the process of redistricting or reapportionment. All right. So when you hear reapportionment, another word for it is redistricting. When you hear wards, you also hear of districts. Most of the time, your wards are within cities, your districts are within counties. All right. So we're going to have a pop quiz right quick, just to make sure everybody is listening. So how often does a city go through the process of redistricting? What is another word for the 10-year period in which we redistrict or we go through the census? It is a decade. We know it as the decennial U.S. Census. When we are looking at these wards, is it a process where our different council members say, because of course in Forest Park we have 5 wards and the mayor is at large. At large means the mayor is elected by an electorate of the entire city. Our council members are elected by majority vote of individuals within their wards. All right. So how many wards we have in Forest Park? Who votes on the mayor? Councilman Wells represents Ward 4. Who does she represent? Well, I guess she represents the entire city. Ward 4 votes on her. That was a trick question. You followed it. All right, so we're good. One of the things I want to make certain is that when you leave this meeting, our biggest advertisement and biggest educational component are our stakeholders and residents that are gathered in this community, because you're out in the community each and every day and you have neighbors. When we're here tirelessly working, when we're here tirelessly working on behalf of the city of Forest Park. All right. So what we had to do, the deviation in Forest Park when we went to the state redistricting office was upwards of what percentage? 7%. You know, and what that means is that that particular ward had 7% more individuals than other wards. When the mayor spoke about one person, one vote, what that means is that we had a council member that could essentially receive more votes based upon the size of their wards, and they had more chances to win based upon the size of their ward, not being equivalent to that of some of their sister wards. All right. And there's a whole case law relative to why we have to do that. So I'm gonna bring up our attorney to let him go through the case law and give you a pop quiz on legal as to the reason why we had to move. And then we'll talk about the timing after he concludes.
So the case law is fairly straightforward. You know, the reason we have one person, one vote is to make sure that every person's vote counts just as strong and just as powerfully as the next person's vote. And so when you have unbalanced wards or unbalanced districts, what it means is if you're in a district where you have fewer residents in that district, then that means your vote is going to count more powerfully than a person who lives in a district where there are more people. And then that's just not fair. We recognize that in the case law and just our history and tradition. And it happens at every level of government. So when we do the reapportionment for the state, they'll, do the change the lines for the Senate districts, for the House districts, as well as for the members of Congress and the House of Representatives. So this happens every 10 years, as was stated. But for cities, the Supreme Court has basically ruled that you can have a deviation of up to 10%. And what that means is, as you know, let's just use simple numbers. If you have a population of 500 in the city, that means every ward would have to have 100 people. But the Supreme Court says you can have up to 110 people in a ward based on the 10% rule. So ours was just underneath that. It was at 7% as it was stated. But the recommendation was to continue with the process because, again, it's not fair, even though 7% is within the limitations of what the Supreme Court has stated, it still means that some people's votes count more strongly than others. So I'm going to stop and do the pop quiz. Let's see if I get it right. So what is the percentage threshold that the Supreme Court allows for deviation? 10%. Okay. And do we do redistricting at every level of government or just at the city level? Okay, well, that's essentially the case law in a nutshell. So.
And again, I want this to be engaging so that when you leave this room, you're able to share the why behind why the governing body is looking to do that. So even though you hear that the Supreme Court ruling, they allow for a 10% deviation, you can only imagine when we start talking about equity to know that on the high end, we're at a positive 7% for one of the wards, and then on the low end, a negative 7% on the other end. You can understand the complexities of why we want to make certain that citywide, all of our wards are balanced, just to prevent any further litigation that could potentially come from someone challenging the results of our election. And the last thing we want to have here is an election process that is challenged, and then we expend city tax dollars to mitigate or litigate that particular process from something that we could have happen on the front end. All right. So I know you may ask, well, if this is so important, why did the city of Forest Park wait until now to do it? Did anybody ask that question to themselves? Well, if it wasn't asked of you, the governing body definitely brought it full circle to staff to figure out why did we wait so late. So it's true. Nothing in government happens quickly. However, once we learned that this wasn't done, of course, there's been a change in administration, a change in different staff position. There was no way we were going to deny the fact that we needed to get the data first to analyze it, to see what that deviation actually was, and then present it to our governing body so that they know going into the 2023 general election what they're up against. Because in November, I can't call the date, but in November, we do have a general election for the city of Forest Park of 3 particular wards. All right. So another pop quiz question. What wards in this city are up for election in November of 2023? 3, 4, and 5. All right. So representatives from wards 3, 4, and 5, the redistricting that we are doing will affect individuals within those wards because some members' wards will change. There were a total out of 20,000, the upwards of 20,000 residents in the city of Forest Park. There are 767 residents that are affected by this change. All right. How many people do we have that live here? Your guess is as good as the federal government. All right. How many residents are affected by this proposed redistricting that this governing body will consider on Monday night? 767. So when you ask, why did we wait, the importance of it, those 767 individuals deserve to know what wards they are voting on. Well, how do we mitigate that? Every resident in this city, we can't speak for the United States Post Office and what happened. What we can say is from your city government, those mailers were supposed to go out last Saturday from our printer. But as with any mail, I'm sure all of you have experienced issues with the mail. I had to track down a package yesterday. But it's just one of those things so that we know it's coming. One of the things that our governing body wanted to make certain of when we expended the funds to ensure that every resident in this city received the correspondence was that you not only knew of the redistricting process, you also knew when qualifying was for this election. All right. This election qualifying begins on the 22nd of August. It's held every day at City Hall from 8:30 to 4:30. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I believe. Correct? All right. So qualifying August 22nd, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8:30 to 4:30 here at City Hall. What that means is the individuals that are coming into this office, we are not worried about this redistricting process because your governing body made certain that we had a full and detailed listing of every household in this city that redistricting affected. The final action of this through local home rule, a charter amendment, I'll get Mr. Williams to come up and talk about that next. There are two ways that you can really do redistricting. Representative Sandra Scott and Representative Bernot could, by virtue of their positions, come inside the city and say, we are redistricting your community. They could. I've seen it happen. It doesn't require a vote of the local governing body. It's just the times that I've seen that happen, the state representatives or the senators recognize that that deviation presents a situation where the balancing of the wards and or districts is not fair. And so the state delegation comes in. The other way that you can do it is through local home rule, through a charter amendment. And that is the process in which this city is headed, so that we don't have to worry about our elected officials on the state level coming in to tell our governing body members how to do their job. But they will if they ever need it to, relative to how important this redistricting process is. So I've called out some terms. I've called out home rule and then this charter amendment that we are presenting on Monday night for final approval. So Mr. Williams, I'll kick it back to you to talk about home rule and charter amendment. Are you guys following me or are we going too fast? Are you following? We good? All right.
So in the state of Georgia, all governmental power flows through the Constitution, and the Constitution vests the primary legislative power in the General Assembly. And so everything that we do as a city flows from power that is given to us by the General Assembly when our charter was created. But there's a general statute, we always call it the home rule statute, that the General Assembly has provided local governments the ability to modify their charters in certain ways. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. So we can modify the charter pursuant to our home rule powers, but only as to certain types of things, and that's listed in the statute. But we have the specific power to amend our charter to provide for reapportionment every 10 years. And so that's what we're doing. The charter amendment process requires that the local government submit and add to our legal organ, which was done, and it's been running these past several weeks.
Legal organ, let's talk. We use a lot of political governmental words. Does everybody know what your legal organ is? Your legal organ is the Clayton News Daily, your newspaper.
So ads have been running in the Clayton News Daily for the past several weeks. And the General Assembly requires a couple things. One, that the ads run. Two, that the city council adopt the charter amendment twice. So we had the first reading of the charter amendment on the 7th, and the second and final reading and final approval will occur on the 21st. So that is our way of amending the charter. And one of the things, if I could to kind of jump ahead a little bit in terms of how the lines are drawn, you know, everyone's familiar with the term gerrymandering.
Everybody know what gerrymandering is?
So gerrymandering is the term we use or at least I use in talking about the process of drawing political lines for political purposes. As the city manager indicated, we, in getting the assistance of the General Assembly's staff, we tried to be as apolitical as humanly possible. And so in looking at the case law for gerrymandering, the most specific area that the courts have looked at is racial gerrymandering, because, you know, the courts have ruled that the drawing of lines is inherently political. However, there are certain things that you can't do. And one of the most important things you can't do is you can't racially gerrymander your districts. when they look at how the standards are applied for determining whether racial gerrymandering has occurred or not, they look at the population, they look at, the racial breakdown and things like that, but they also look at the process for how you drew your lines. And what they'll look at is absent any problems, whether it's racial gerrymandering or otherwise, what they want to see are clearly delineated boundaries with no funny business. And by funny business, what I mean is, imagine if the line going down Main Street zigzagged all over the place and had all these weird cutouts. The question, well, why did you do that? What's the purpose of that? And the answer would obviously be, well, we're trying to get certain people on this side in this district and certain people on that side in that district. And that's where you run into problems. So when the staff prepared this map, what they tried to do was eliminate any of those types of weird cutouts and weird lines to make the boundaries as clear and smooth as possible under the circumstances, while still balancing each ward. So when we get an opportunity, you can come up here and look at the current map and compare that to the new map that's proposed to be approved on Monday, and you'll see clear areas where they've rounded off the lines. They've used streets, they've used clear boundaries like the railroad or things like that. So it's clear and justifiable. And so anyone can come and look, oh, that makes sense. This neighborhood we tried to keep together. We wanted to make sure everyone north of, I'm making up, north of Main Street or west of Ash Street is in the same district. So it's clear and it's understandable. So you want to do a pop quiz?
Pop quiz.
Okay. Is racial gerrymandering legal?
Two
Okay.
communities do racial gerrymandering. Absolutely.
Sometimes, but we don't here in the city of Forest Park. The only political factor that went into these wards, and this is just for transparency, is all the incumbents were left in the wards that they already represented. And that the Supreme Court has ruled that protection of incumbency is a legitimate type of drawing lines or a legitimate purpose. So we're clearly okay on that front. So any other?
All right. So does everyone realize what an incumbent is? I know we use a lot of legal terms. I want to make certain that when you leave here, you're able to come in tomorrow and be the city manager or the attorney for the city of Forest Park, at least as it pertains to redistricting. Get me out of it. All right. And so one of the comments our attorney made was the only political, which I don't think is political, I just think it's right, that we did, because of where our council members are currently situated in their wards, those were the only addresses that were provided, because it wouldn't be fair for us to draw out existing council members out of their wards. Now, do communities do it? Absolutely. I think our state representatives know of some very close to us that did it here recently, but that process is just not one that we were willing to, especially not giving us trying to keep this process as apolitical as possible. This attempt was solely based upon us balancing out the wards and ensuring that that deviation of 7% came down to more like 1 or 2%, which is what we ended up with. Now, can we prevent this over the course of the next 10 years? Absolutely not. When 10 years come, that word that we talked about, redistricting happens all over again, because one of the things that were happening as our governing body members work tirelessly to enhance quality of life in this community, diversifying what the housing portfolio is, we hope that we see that growth around our community. And one of the things that we identified when we went to the state reapportionment office to start this process is that while we did have some growth, we still are the largest municipality in Clayton County. It appeared we had a lot of people moving around in this city, like some of our areas that were more dense or less populated, but that just comes from different apartment communities, duplexes, triplexes, and the sixplexes that we have. And it could also mean that people were not counted properly when the 2010 census was done. All right. So one of the things that our governing body drilled us with was ensuring that our community had as much information as possible. So we've talked about the email notification that went out. We've talked about the mailer that went out. We've been working on this so hard that now we want to show you a map to where we're hoping on tomorrow. So historically, for those that have been really indebted into politics in Clayton County, you'll recognize this voter precinct finder. The only information, and I've been in this county for 9 years, the only information you were able to get on this voting precinct finder was information relative to the county. So all of your county officials that represented those areas, from your judges, your state representatives, all of that, your sheriff, you could never see the individual municipalities' information on the county's website. Well, we're happy to report, if you scroll down on the right-hand side, that now when you start clicking, if you click on Forest Park, down, when you use this system now, you'll be able to see when you type in your address who your representative is. And this is something that has not been done for any other municipality in this county. And we just launched it an hour and a half ago. Just an hour. And so the beauty of this is, so someone who doesn't mind everyone knowing where their address is, we're going to test this system because I haven't even tested it. So somebody who doesn't mind providing your address, we're going to test it just to show you the information that'll now come up for you. 934 Forest Avenue. And so you see it automatically starts to populate the information. I'm not sure if you can put the whole word. Press enter. Type in AVE. Is that your street? Ernest Drive, off of Mitchell. All right, so if you go over to I can tell that you're in Ward 2. And your representative is Councilman DeBooz Anton. In addition to that, if you'll pull up the spreadsheet, one of the other things that we're going to post on our website in the morning, if you will search that street name, Control F, type in Forest, type in Forest Avenue. So I can tell you that there is nothing affected in your ward by this redistricting. Of the 767 addresses that were changed, all of those individuals within this city will be able to see, you'll stop there, you'll be able to see what ward they were in. Let's go back to the top. Let me drop. Technology never works when you want it to. Okay. All right, here we go. So just for ease of information, the other thing that we've done, let's just say someone lives on Alder Drive, which is a part of Ward 5. We're able to show by street, by parcel, and by address where those districts are going. So these individuals on Alder Drive, their district was was Ward 5. They're now going to Ward 4. And so what we've tried to do is provide every avenue possible for our residents to know and be able to click on our website, as you will today. We'll be able to share with you if, in fact, your street changed. And so this is just an attempt for us, since it is last minute, this is just an attempt for us to go over and beyond to ensure ease of access so that voting rights in this city are always protected. One of the beauties of this election cycle is your precinct doesn't change because there's only one voting precinct in the city of Forest Park. Does everyone know what that is? It's at the Forest Park Senior Center, right behind Star Park. So everybody that votes, both early voting and election day voting, it's been a long day. It's at the Senior Center. It's at the Senior Center. All of it is at the Senior Center, correct? Yeah. Yeah, all of the elections for this time will be held at the Senior Center. And the other thing, the city of Forest Park, yes, ma'am. So yes, so it's definitely the senior center. That I know because I saw that on the document. It's definitely the senior. So I'm gonna get to that. So everything relative to your election, you will have to get a precinct card. All right, that precinct card is mailed not by the city, it's mailed by the county, and it'll show you where the election is being held, when it is held, and what your ward is. The reason why I assume I wasn't here in years past, and I want to stay out of the election process as much as possible, but the reason why I'm assuming that this election is being held at the Senior Center is that I am assuming that the county precinct for this city was at the Senior Center, if I just had to be a guessing man. And the reason why I'm saying that is because the county is conducting this election for this year. And what that means is, instead of the paper ballots, instead of the paper process to where individuals are coming in, you're penciling in and we're scanning into a machine, all of the election process will be 100% digital and electronic so that there is no possible way for ballot tampering, none of that. And in addition, whereas the city is paid upwards of $50,000 to $60,000 for conducting this election, we're paying $11,000, a full savings on the backs and the shoulders of our taxpayers. All right, and it removes any of your staff from the election process. All right, so I'll find out about this senior center, but I'm quite certain that in the documentation that I've seen, it says the Forest Park Senior Center, but don't quote me on that. But typically, if I see it in my head, I read it somewhere. Our interim city clerk, isn't the election at the senior center? Okay. So, and what it is, so Miss Michelle is the interim city clerk. I was under the impression that the election was always at the senior center. No one shared that with me until just now, but I will find out first thing tomorrow what's going on with that, because I don't like surprises at all. All right, so we'll find out about that, but irregardless, if it's the rec center or the senior center, we'll make certain that everybody in this community knows where that election is being held. Now I'm curious myself and how that even happened. Yes, ma'am. Well, so I'll have to rely on some of our election officials, but what I believe is when it was held at Fountain was a precinct for a countywide election, I would imagine. I don't think municipal election, this is a city election. This is just city. And from what I recognize, or from what I've seen, I don't think there are any county-related ballot things in November of this year. I haven't seen anything. This is typically in your gubernatorial years, which are the years that you have governor's races, you have county elections, unless it's something special. And then in your odd years, you have municipal races. Right, Mike? Y'all are putting me to the test. All right. Yes, ma'am. They will, but a presidential election wouldn't affect the residents of Forest Park as it relates to the wards, because any and everybody can vote on behalf of the president. Then it becomes whether you're voting for a Republican or a Democrat based upon the March election. You would. But your ward wouldn't affect who you vote for. That would be done in the primary. When is it, March? Presidential primary in March. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. So what Representative Bernot is saying, it's like Fountain. If Fountain is one of the approved voting precincts for countywide elections, then at that time, you would go to Fountain. For municipal elections, typically your municipality specifies where that election is held. I think what I'm hearing from Ms. Wells and Ms. James is that in the past, it's been at the rec center on election day, and early voting has been at, yeah.
Last year, we had our regular day voting next day. And then in years past, we had our early voting in our election at.
Got it. So maybe I'm talking about early voting. I know early voting because we blocked off the days is at the senior center. City Hall is just not equipped to deal with the election traffic coming in and out, along with City Hall being open. It's just too small. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. One of the other things that we've even asked is that we have a translator because we have such a large Hispanic and Latino community. So that's something that we're looking forward to being able to offer just for translators to be able to translate the ballot. All right. Has this been good information for you guys? Have I confused anybody outside of myself relative to where this election is actually going to be held? But I want to clarify some things. If the county is running our election, the city of Forest Park still serves as qualifying officer. What that means is every individual seeking to run for one of those respective wards, they are still qualified by the qualifying officer here in the city of Forest Park. More than likely, that individual will be Michelle. Michelle, will you please stand? More than likely, that individual will be Michelle. Michelle is the interim city clerk here for the city of Forest Park. And so one of the things we just like to make certain is that we keep all politics out of our processes. And our governing body members have been great as it pertains to just letting staff handle this process as long as it's fair, equitable, and we're ensuring that all of their constituents have proper information. All right. So pop quiz, how many cities are there in Georgia? Oh, my bad. That was the wrong quiz. How frequently does the city go through the redistricting process? All right. Second question. How many wards are up for re-election in the city of Forest Park? All right. What was the highest deviation we found when we went to the state reapportionment office relative to this redistricting process? 7%. All right. Is this a political process? What is the meaning of apolitical? What is the meaning of apolitical? It's non-political. Your city staff is, they should be. All right. How many residents within the city of Forest Park did this redistricting or will this redistricting affect? You guys are smart. Less than 800. And just to give you a number that I didn't give you, on the high end, the population range of our wards should be, will be now between 3,957 and 4,008. So you can see what that comparative analysis is, whereas before it was 3,600 versus 4,200 in another respective award. That's just some interesting information that I wanted to share with you. What is the case that specifies the reason why one person, one vote is so important? I never wanted to be an attorney either. What is the case law? Baker versus Carr. Mike, didn't you tell me? Oh, which one did you know?
That's on me. I didn't cite a specific case. I didn't cite, I just explained what the law said, but that's the, that's the Supreme Court case where that was decided.
Baker versus Carr. So if you really want to sound smart, go home and tell somebody you learned what Baker versus Carr is. All right. The process of this redistricting process, based upon redistricting, what is gerrymandering? Based upon race. In addition to that, was it the pleasure of our council to wait this long to do this process? It was not. So just some of the angst that you may have based upon change, just blame it on a new city manager coming in and don't blame it on our governing body members. But lo and behold, on Monday, if this is adopted, one thing that we know is that when it's time for this general election in November, all of our wards are evenly balanced and between a 1% and 2% deviation. All right, so this is the part I like. I'm going to open up the floor for questions. Now, just the rule of town hall questions, you can ask me anything relative to the city of Forest Park as city manager, but Ricky is not important. Nor can you ask me any questions about my bosses, Councilwoman Akins-Wells or Ms. James. We'll refrain from those type of remarks and I'll answer all of your questions. All right, Apostle.
Voting this time. What do y'all have in place for elderly people who don't know you?
So that's a great question. So there are a lot of organizations. I probably should rely on Representative Scott and Representative Burnett because they're so. Abrams. You won't have the paper. Which is better? So the way it works, so from what I've heard, a lot of we don't call seniors, we call them our legacy residents here. That's just a change that we're using. But on that screen, for individuals that have hearing issues, seeing issues, you can make it larger. You're able to tell that poll worker, I can't see the screen. They have to make it larger. You have the ability to select all of your candidates. You can see the ballot. You have to be able to see the ballot before you actually go to vote. If any of you walk in a polling place and there is not a sample ballot posted, notify your poll workers immediately because you have the ability to review that ballot before you go behind that actual machine. In addition to that, if you have to wait in a line, contact your elected officials or this office immediately because that won't happen.
But I'm sure they're gonna have to share.
Yeah, and that's what I was doing. And that I can assure you, that's why I said it, because that's something they don't say. But you'll be able to have chairs for the seniors to pull up to. And then when you cast your ballot, if you're in the city of Forest Park, you have one vote to cast, all right? Depending on your ward. When you cast that ballot, review it, all right? Review it, then print it. When you print it, your selection is on that actual ballot. You walk over to the machine yourself, all right? And it looks like a big scanner box. When you get to that scanner box, you simply insert your ballot. If you don't see the number or that counter go up, don't you move, because that means your ballot wasn't casted. All right, that is very important. And the poll worker should say the number right now, Ms. Wells, is 161. If you don't see that number go to 162, your ballot was not casted. But this process takes out all human error. And should the systems go down, all of the ballots that you've cast are locked up in a bin right up under that machine. All right, any more questions? Yes, ma'am. Awesome question. So one of the legal classes that Attorney Williams provided was talking about home rule, charter amendments, et cetera. So one of the things that we did before we went down this road, we took it to our governing body to approve the process for us to move forward. Once they approved the process for us to move forward, it required 2 readings. It required to be posted in the local legal organ. And on Monday night, our council members will have final vote on that redistricting. They'll have final vote on that charter amendment because legally it required 2 readings. But our governing body will hear final comments, discussion, and vote on it for the final time on Monday night. What does that mean for city staff? Well, if qualifying starts the next day at 8:30, what does that mean for city staff? Well, if individuals come up, the reason why we went the extra mile to get this additional information is because on 8:30, that next morning when we're doing qualifying, if individuals that live on those respective streets want to come qualify, it's our job to verify which ward they are in, or that the ward that they are running for is actually the proper ward. And we're prepared to do that because we have a full listing of that information by address and by parcel. Yes, ma'am. Monday night. You'll know Monday night, no later, because we have 9 items on the agenda. You should know Monday night by 7:30. All right, Ms. James? So we were assured that they would be mailed. If you don't, contact me and I will go there, because there's no reason, because we paid $4,000 to ensure that every resident in the city received it. Minuteman, well, I didn't mean to say the name, but local business. And it could, a lot of it, there are a lot of challenges that people face with the United States Postal Service. I think we all know that. So it could not be the vendor. It could be that they've been dropped off. It's just the Postal Service because they hate doing door-to-door mailers because they have to go to individual addresses. It could be that it's just delayed on their end. But if that's the case, we'll contact our state representatives. Yes, ma'am, Representative Burnell. I meant Congressman. I thought y'all can handle everything.
Well, we can, but.
Got it. Would that be something that you guys are interested in? Us just bringing out the machines, setting them up. It's really interesting. A lot of people are afraid of the machines. I prefer the machines better because you really can't trick those machines. You can't. There's no way possible. But if you guys would like that, we'll arrange a date to where we just take the machines down to our city center. No ballots. We'll put Bart Simpson, Mickey Mouse, something like that, because a lot of people write in those names anyway. We'll just put them down at the senior center and let our community start to get a feel of what those machines look like. Because I don't believe the city of Forest Park has used these machines before for a municipal election, right? You guys get the scan? Yeah. Oh, did you? Okay. All right. Any more questions? You guys are too easy. Any questions over here? Miss James? Miss James should be an expert too. Absolutely. So we do have a calling post, we have a red alert, but our calling post systems are only, I have trauma from calling posts from my church, calling, telling me about dead people every week. Jesus Christ. Dearly beloved, so passed away today. But no, so one of the things that we encourage, and we encourage all of you to do this, I'm assuming that, I'm serious, that used to be one of my preachers back in the day too. I know she lived in Forest Park. One of the things that we really encourage, we're launching a new app next week, but we can only reach those that want to be reached. So if you have an email address, our PIO is in the back. We encourage you to see him before this meeting and make certain that you are signed up to receive all of our email notifications. And we also, for City of Forest Park residents for free, we have a system called Code Red that will alert you of any major weather alert information or activity within this city. And so if you are not signed up for that system, please sign up before you leave. So now I'm curious, how did most of you find out about this meeting if the postcard didn't go out? Was it via email? Okay, so our emails are working. All right, Ms. Wells. So we were sending one big mailer, and then every resident will still get a precinct card. It's that little white card that has all the information. Every resident will still get those, but it's mailed by the Secretary of State. And it's once qualifying is done. We can do two. Yes, ma'am. We will definitely do that because we know of the delay that we've had. The postmaster ain't always the easiest person to get some information from. Maybe if you go with your red dress and your pen, they'll tell you a little bit more than they'll tell us. Any more questions? This is your chance to ask any question. Yes, ma'am. Five, 303, will you pull up 5303? I don't think West, will we pull up that? I don't think West is on. Looks like you are in Ward 2 right now, the Councilman Pine, your council member. Based upon this proposed change, you will be in Ward 4, which is Councilwoman Latricia Aikens well. No, ma'am. If approved on Monday night, your governing body will vote on Monday night. You would move from Ward 2 to Ward 4, just based upon us balancing out the wards. You get. Right, this is just informational. Yes, ma'am, this is just informational. Yes, ma'am. You're fine. I want you to ask. It just depends on where you are. It just depends on where you are. Yeah, it just depends on where you are. Clearly, what it looks like to me is that Ward 2 meets Ward 4 at some point, and she was close to that line because typically what was affected were your outer edges of some of these wards. But Ward 2 and Ward 4 do connect. So if you look at this map right behind you. Around the walls are the individual maps. I'm sure you'll find either on that one for Ward 2 or that one, you'll see where those streets just were close together to that other ward. And that's why we put these around the wall so that you can see the individual respective wards. And again, so I'll recap. So this information here is fresh off the press. You'll be able to, on tomorrow, we'll be uploading this to our website. You'll be able to go on here, put in your address, and just as simple as it was that I found her address, you can see what it was. The current ward is Ward 2, and you can see what is proposed.
Mr. City, I'll jump in. You're on West Street, I believe you're here. This is the current map. That's the new map. So this is part of Ward 2 today, but tomorrow or I think about it's gonna be in Ward 4. This is what I'm talking about, like
Brown and
roundabouts.
Yeah.
This jumps down south of Springdale. Now everything north of Springdale, and I guess, north and into the east of Springdale will be in Ward 2, and then everything outside will be in Ward 4. It just straightens this part out.
So that's a perfect example. Her street is a perfect, you can see how it jets down in here, and the proposed, it just cleans it up. But you know, that sort of makes sense. You walked out. Yeah, yeah. All right. Any more questions? We'd be remiss if we did. Yes, sir. One of the things I want to clarify for everyone, as you walk around and look at these maps, if you look at Ward 3 looks huge, right? The majority of Ward 3 is commercial or industrial space, not people. All right, well, it is people, but it's not a lot of people. That's why when you're looking at the size of it on the actual map, it looks so large, but that's over near the Fort Gillum area, on that side of the city.
Now, if somebody,
There's no possibility that you can vote twice. There's no possibility that you can vote twice. The information that I'm pulling this information from will be transmitted to the Secretary of State's office, who will then program your voter ID in your ward. That'll compile that white card that you'll get from the Secretary of State's office. There's no way that you can do it.
I'm saying to them,
Oh, it'll be key. So similar to when you go inside to vote on a county election, when you go in and you provide your ID and they give you your voter card, that voter card is programmed based upon your information. It's no way possible that you can vote twice because the system now will show that you voted twice because it will only program that ballot one time. The information that you're seeing here, what we have is what we call GIS shapefile. So it's a map of all of this parcel data that we transmit to the Secretary of State, who have all of these robots everywhere to input all of this data to ensure that all of your information about you is correct. And then if you ever at any time have a question about that information, what we're sharing with you, your governing body is doing to ensure that you have all of the information, you can come right here and find it. In addition to that, you can also go to, what is it called, My Voter page, and get that same information again. But I've always told people, make certain that before you go to the poll, you know that all of your voter information that the Secretary of State has is correct. Especially if it's a situation, so I can't call off the top of my head, when the last day is to register to vote in the November election. It's October sometime, I would imagine, or the end of September. Let's just say you go into the DMV, all right? So we're giving you this information. I'm going through this with you today. Let's say you go into the DMV right before the last day it is for you to register to vote. And you don't realize it, but you click that button that's at the end of that application where you're changing your address on your license. You've now changed your ward, especially if you move outside of that ward. And sometimes you do it haphazardly, not even knowing, because of the wait that you've experienced when you go to the DMV. And what you didn't know is that you just changed your address. And I've seen it happen time and time again.
Mr. For clarity on the voting location, for the senior center, advanced voting, and for the, election day is gonna be at the gym.
So what's the time? So just clarification. Okay, so early voting, which is also known as advanced voting, is at the senior center. Of course, it runs 3 weeks prior to that election. What are we running it, Monday through Friday? I know there is Saturday voting as well, and one Sunday, and then we don't vote the Monday before the general election on that Tuesday. I know that just confused everybody, but it's 3 weeks of early voting. You got 2 Saturday voters and 1 Sunday day, and you don't vote the Monday before that Tuesday general election. All right, any more questions? Ms. Burnell, well, let me go to a resident. Thank you so much. Yes, sir. Go ahead. City manager about 2 months ago. Tell you what. That was supposed to be anonymous. But no, so does anyone else have questions? Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I'll be remiss, you can never be a great person without a great team. So I'll introduce our press secretary, as I call him, Mr. Javon Lloyd. So Javon handles, it was a little sketchy because I'm accustomed to being Mayor said it today. I'm accustomed to being a one-man band, you know, for those that have known me along the way, but Javon is an amazing writer. You know, one of the things that he, as well as my assistant, Samaria, have done, we're pushing all information. All of the events that our respective council members are doing, our governing body, all of it, we're pushing it so that you guys know what's going on here in the city of Forest Park. We have 2 events coming up this weekend, a free plug for a free table. We have Forest Park Days on Saturday. That's my first table that I need. In addition to that, Councilman Gutierrez is having a back in school bash on Saturday at 12 to 5. And then on Friday, we have First Fridays there at Star Park beginning at 7 o'clock. I'm sorry. I am. What is the event Friday called? No. Fun Friday. All right, so if you don't have anything to do this weekend, come on out to the city of Forest Park. On today, Councilwoman James hosted her Ward meeting. So if you don't have anything to do, you can always find an event to do here in this busy city. But again, it's been my pleasure to serve on my 101 day here in this city. Thank you guys for coming. Ms. Wells.
No, I just want to say, piggyback off of what the resident did. Thank you. I know it's your stay, but you have done a lot.
Thank you. It's not easy, you know, my friends always, the question anybody asks of a city manager is, well, how do you get along with the elected officials? I'm like, shoot, I like them right there. I guess we could, because I get along with all of them. Because one of the things that I can say is that this governing body, it makes it easy when you have a governing body that cares about their community. You know, so their frustrations when they ride around and see trash. I hate Tuesdays and Wednesdays when Miss Wells is off. I hate the 2 or 3 days that we see the mayor. The mayor has meetings in this office because I know she's riding roads. Miss James, I'm glad that she is back in school so she can get out of this city. You know, Councilman Gutierrez, they are some of the most busiest council people I've ever seen in my life, but you know, we laugh at them. I think we're happy that Miss James is in school. You know, we still have to wait Tuesday, Wednesday for Ms. Wells, but just know that you have a governing body that is working on your behalf, and they require nothing but excellence from their city staff. And for that, we're just thankful. All right, this concludes our meeting tonight. If you have any questions, all of this information will be made available on our website before noon tomorrow. If you would like, you can walk around for a few minutes and see the maps. If you have any questions to see if your street or your ward changed, you can come over to our IT desk right here to the left, and he can type in your address to let you know if your ward changed. All right, thank you to all again, to our state representatives, Representative Stovall, Representative Sandra Lee, Representative Scott, and Representative Byrd. No, I'm never gonna live that down. And to our governing body members, thank you.